Hello and welcome into this Saturday, August 9th edition of the League Winners Fantasy Show. I am, as always, your host, Dalton Salings, and as you can see, I am joined by a special guest today, Mr. Nathan Meehet. Thank you so much for coming, Nathan.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Today, we're going to be talking about some split backfields, a couple running back rooms where we might agree, we might disagree on who's going to be getting the number one carries, if we're taking anyone from that room, really where we lie on some of these running backs. Before we do that, I do want to address a little news from the preseason we've seen so far. Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson had a fractured pinky. It looks like he's going to be back to practice soon, so this shouldn't really impact the Colts quarterback race. As I've said, I have Anthony Richardson being the starter week one. I think that will continue to be the case. He looks like he's going to be back in practice this week, potentially playing on Saturday in their second preseason game. The other piece of news, running back Quinshon Judkins, second round pick, unsigned by the Cleveland Browns still, had a little bit of an update in his legal case. So his lawyer waived the right to a speedy trial. So that means this could drag out a little bit longer. There's been reports on both sides. Some people saying this means he won't even play till 2026. Others saying this means that a settlement's coming and he'll play soon. I did move Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson both up my board. I'm currently projecting an extended miss from Quinshon Judkins, but as more information comes out, I'll make adjustments as necessary.
Jerome Ford to the moon.
We do have a big Jerome Ford truther here, and without further ado, I am going to dive into these split backfields. The first team I want to bring up is actually Nathan's team. I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. So obviously the incumbent Jalen Warren is back. Najee Harris is gone. He's with the Chargers. Rookie Caleb Johnson is the new guy here. Also a name to keep an eye on in the backfield is Kenneth Gainwell. Just a name to throw out there. He's received a lot of praise at practice for his receiving work,
Yes.
which is the reason we're really talking about this, is the receiving work. Obviously Aaron Rodgers in at quarterback, that means that there's going to be a bigger emphasis on pass protection. And so far at camp, Caleb Johnson has not been receiving the greatest reviews in that category.
Yeah. And Caleb Johnson hasn't been known as a good pass catcher anyways. So on third downs, on any sort of passing down, you have to question will Caleb Johnson see any time on the field, whereas Jalen Warren, every year in his career, it was the same way with Najee Harris.
Yep.
In that sort of split. On third downs, who was on the field, it was Jalen Warren. And you look at it, Najee was an established runner.
Yep.
Right now you can make an argument Jalen Warren is also the best pure runner in the backfield, period.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
right now you look at where Caleb Johnson is being drafted to where Jalen Warren is being drafted, and I don't get the large, gap. What is it, a 3-round gap right now? Or I think it was a 4 a few weeks ago. I think maybe it's shrunk.
It's come down a lot. On Sleeper, it looks like they're only going
2 rounds?
about 9 picks apart.
Okay,
it seems
so
like
it's come
about
down on
a
Sleeper.
round
I think
apart.
ESPN is a
ESPN
pretty
is always a little
substantial.
high. Yeah, it's 9 picks apart. So
Yeah.
it looks like in a 10-man league, Caleb Johnson's going at the top of the 9th round. Jalen Warren's going at the last pick in the 9th round. So there is that big gap in terms of draft capital. And it's important to remember that not only will Jalen Warren presumably be receiving a lot of the third down work, pretty much any passing situation he'll be on the field, because Rodgers already doesn't have that trust with Caleb Johnson, and it's dangerous to kind of put himself in that position. Rodgers, we've seen be injured in the past. We know he wants to feel secure on the field, and even on those third downs, it's not going to be Caleb Johnson the second guy. Kenneth Gainwell's the second guy on those passing down situations. He's not going to have a big year in terms of like statistics, but I think he could see 35 targets this year, and those are targets that could have gone to Caleb Johnson when Warren needs to blow.
So, my argument for Caleb Johnson though would be twofold. A, his ADP now is a lot better than it was a month ago. A month ago, he was going right where Henderson was going.
Yeah.
And in that top group above a DeAndre Swift and Isaiah Pacheco oftentimes in best ball drafts. So the slip now, I've bought a few shares of him in my best ball leagues.
Yeah.
And I will say that the pure fact of how much Arthur Smith is going to want to run the football.
That's true.
I think both running backs. I think that the argument is more, who is better between Warren and Johnson. I think both at their current ADP though are, can be very justified bias, because I think the Steelers' offense is going to be solid. Is it going to be great? No. The defense is going to keep them on the field though a pretty substantial amount, because right now project to have arguably the best defense in the league. So even if this offense is average, they are going to run the football a ton. I think both backs can easily outperform ADP.
So
Jalen Warren can get there through some third down work, and I think Caleb Johnson, I think you could see him get 1,000-yard season. I think he's going to get all the goal line work over Jalen Warren, which I think is going to be huge for some touchdowns sprinkled in throughout the year.
I have Caleb Johnson projected for just under 900 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Now, you did say you like both of them at their ADP. I'm going to throw a couple names at you going right around Caleb Johnson right now.
Yeah.
You talked about a DeAndre Swift. He's going about 2 picks ahead. Are you taking a DeAndre Swift or a Caleb Johnson?
You know my love for DeAndre Swift.
I do.
It's probably at this current time DeAndre Swift just because there's no competition in that Bears backfield. And the Bears offense has to be good. I mean, the talent in that offense is ridiculous. I mean, you can't, it would be shocking if they're not a good offense and remarkably better than last season. So give me that. I would want Swift, but I would want Swift against a lot of people in front of him.
That's fair.
So I think that's more about my love for Swift rather than, yeah. How about you?
Sticking with, I would take Swift as well. And sticking with the running backs, 2 picks after Tyrone Tracy. That's a team we will get to later in this episode, but just a little.
And another guy I'm going to talk up a lot
Yeah.
too. I would probably have Caleb Johnson because I think the upside's a little higher. I think the Steelers are a better offense. I think you get a little bit higher of a floor with Caleb Johnson and a little bit higher of a ceiling. I think that's slight though. I like in both of them. I've been drafting Tyrone Tracy all year. I think he's been undervalued. Yeah. Caleb Johnson, I'm just now recently starting to draft because I think he slipped too much in value. I think people are overreacting. But yeah.
A few other names, not running backs, but a wide receiver going 1 pick before him, Roma Dunze versus a Caleb Johnson.
I am in on Roma Dunze long term in Dynasty out this year for the Bears offense. Just where Dunze is going again. So much talent in that Bears offense, too much target competition. Sure. I think that also depends a lot on team stack. You know, if I need a wide receiver there, I'm going to draft a Roma Dunze. Whereas if, I need a running back, I like the value better for Caleb Johnson in that spot.
I'm taking Roma Dunze there, and I have a lot of Roma Dunze so far this year.
Interesting.
The first name that really makes me kind of have to stop and think, I think the other 3 have been, I'm going the other guy strongly, but Jacoby Myers is going 3 picks behind him. Wide receiver for the Raiders. What are your thoughts there?
You're listing all the guys I really like. And that round, 8 through 10 spot is rounds I really have enjoyed drafting in this year just because I think there's a bunch of guys that are being really undervalued.
Yeah.
Jacoby Myers is one of them. Wide receiver 1 right now on the Raiders who have to be better on offense than last year. There's literally no way they can't. And last year, you look at Brock Bowers, that offense was good enough to sustain the tight end 1 and probably wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
If you would have had him in a wide receiver spot. So I like Jacoby Myers a lot in that spot. Again, depends on team composition.
Yeah.
If I need a wide receiver, Jacoby Myers hands down. If I need a running back, I'm taking Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, I just don't see a world right now where I end up with Caleb Johnson on a team just because of the talent of the guys around him. He'd have to slide past a few more running backs for me to feel comfortable taking him. I have him as my RB down the board a lot farther than a lot of these other guys. I have him coming in way lower at my RB 35 this year. So I'm not high on him at all. I have him 7 spots, just purely running backs, 7 spots off his ADP. And I do not feel there's a lot of guys that are maybe being drafted right around or behind him that I feel more comfortable with.
On my rankings, I have Caleb Johnson good amount higher than you. I have him as my RB 27, and I have him one spot below RJ Harvey. And honestly, if I get the choice right now between the 2 of them, I'm taking Harvey, but it's a painful choice because I don't believe in Harvey. I have Montgomery 2 spots higher than him. Also, I like the upside more with Caleb Johnson. I have him ahead of Brian Robinson. I have him at 2 spots ahead of Tracy. I have him ahead of Joe Mixon, who I just keep dropping on my board with the injury concerns. So I like Caleb Johnson, but yeah, I agree. In that range, it is a lot of preference. It also depends on what type of league you're drafting and where the value is falling. Sure. I do like Caleb Johnson at his current ADP. Where it was 2 months ago was ridiculous. I mean, you can't. There's the round 6.
Yeah.
ADP was just nuts, but I like the round 8. Getting him at the 8-9 turn, I feel like is solid value, and the upside is there for him to be on 1,000. You can make a case next year that he's an 1,000-yard rusher, 7 touchdown season. He could get there.
Yeah, I don't see that same upside. I think that's why I'm lower on him. Would you mind taking us into our next team for this? Positions.
So our next team is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we are going to look at Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, and
Bishal Tootin.
Quinshon Judkins. Is that your guy in that
That is
backfield?
not my guy in the backfield. Through these teams, so the way I see this backfield kind of breaking down, I have Bigsby lead the team in carries. I have him for just 165 compared to 120 for ETN. So I do think it's close, but I think that Bigsby leads in carries. But I do have ETN leading in fantasy points because I think he gets more of the passing work. I have him for almost 50 catches this year out of the backfield, and obviously in the PPR format, that is a huge deal. He is a little bit higher. I have him for less than 500 yards on the ground and only 3 touchdowns. But the passing work I think is there. I think that allows him to take a step up and be the number one fantasy-wise for this offense.
Yeah. I'm like you. I'm completely out on Judkins. I think people are trying to just create a second Bucky Irving. Whereas that Bucky Irving, if that happened every year, then there would be no it wouldn't be this shocker of a year Bucky Irving had. And people are trying to force that narrative because Liam Cohen is now over there, and so to me, I also have Tank Bigsby. I have Tank Bigsby as the number one running back there and leading the team in carries, and I have him as number one overall in fantasy points too. I see it. I think Travis Etienne is definitely going to get more of the passing work. I think that offense has massive improvement this year.
Okay.
I think the Jags are a good team. And I think Tank Bigsby gets all of the goal line work.
Yes.
I think he gets all of the running down, the first and second down work. So I like, and then I also have just purely based on ADP. Travis is 3 rounds higher right now, which makes no sense to me. If anything, this should be a 1-pick difference. I mean, he said this is a 1A, 1B at best.
Would you believe me if I told you that on Sleeper, Quinshon Judkins is going before Tank Bigsby?
I've been in a bunch of drafts on Sleeper that he goes ahead of Tank Bigsby, and I'm sitting there around 14 sometimes.
Pick 140 is where he's going right
so
now.
I'm sitting there, really late in these drafts, so around 12, around 13, getting Tank Bigsby. Well, I feel very confident in leading that team in carries and everything out of camp so far. Every single person that, beat reporter that has been at the Jags camp has said, it's clear who the RB1 in that team is. It's Tank Bigsby.
Yeah.
And no one is talking about it. I feel very similar with Jerome Ford. It's like I'm looking at around 15 or around 16 with Jerome Ford, and I'm getting in potential RB1 that right now is the leading candidate, over 50% chance I would say be an RB1 on that team. And you're getting that deep in drafts.
I was going to say, I'm not as in on Tank Bigsby as you are, but at that value, it's ridiculous not to get him. I do have a little bit of him in best ball, about the same amount I have as ETN actually, so I have an even split of those two guys, but at that value, it is ridiculous to not take him because he is the one. He is going to get that rushing work, and the touchdown upside is there. I think he has double-digit touchdown upside. It's not what I'm projecting, but I think that ceiling is there for him. Yeah. And it's ridiculous to not maybe take at least a look at it and see where we can go from there. But I do think it's very interesting to see what happens. I'm not even going to throw out the names being drafted around him because it's laughable. Yeah. But I will scroll up here a little bit and see Travis Etienne is going kind of similarly to where we saw Jalen Warren going. He's going in that range, so in the 90s. So it is about, in a 10-man league, a 4 or a 5 round discount to get Bigsby, which I have Etienne ranked a little bit ahead of his ADP as well. So I have both guys about 4 spots ahead of where they're being drafted right now. So I think both are a value, but I cannot complain about someone prioritizing Bigsby over Etienne because of that discount. If you look at even the receivers you could be drafting in that range, it is a ridiculous difference. You could be getting even a Tyler Warren, if you want to go to the tight end position, a Jaden Reed, Ricky Pearsall, Matthew Golden, all going in that Travis Etienne range, whereas around Tank Bigsby is Kyle Williams. That is just a shot in the dark at that point. So you can tell me I have a team's RB1 in the 14th round.
And it's something where, this is why, you almost have to throw out ADP at a certain point on any of these sites, and you have to look at, high roller ADP or the expert rankings, because it's just, it's laughable where these rankings are at. And even a guy like, getting so much hype, Jordan Mason, getting so much hype. I could argue right now, at best, these offenses are very, very similar, should be in terms of production, right? One's got J.J. McCarthy, we haven't seen. When we have seen, hasn't really looked great. At quarterback, both have two elite wide receivers, so young gun and an elite wide receiver, two similar offenses. Jordan Mason clearly right now is behind Aaron Jones. People are projecting maybe he takes over later in the year. Right now, Tank Bigsby is the RB1 on that team.
Yeah.
Right? He's not just being projected to overtake later in the year, is right now. And he's going, 30 picks lower?
It looks like 29 picks earlier is Jordan
And it's
Mason.
like, why, at that Jordan Mason range, I can get a Ricky Pearsall or I can get a wide receiver, and then I can just take Team Bigsby 3 rounds later and get excellent value there for a player I would say is in a better position to break out. Like, Jordan Mason might be the better talent.
I would agree. And I'm going to be honest, so I have been kind of out on Bigsby just because of my projections for him, but this conversation really adds the ADP value that is ridiculous right now. By the time you get to drafting at your home leagues, the ADP will probably come up a little bit. Preseason football, people adjust their rankings, realize that Bishal is not as good as many people are projecting him to be. But you kind of talked about throwing out the ADP. Take advantage of this ADP.
Yeah.
If you're in a draft where that you know that you can get Bigsby in the 14th, grab him in the 13th. You know he's going to be there. People aren't going to be scrolling, and even if they are scrolling, Tank Bigsby isn't a name that's going to jump out at you as, that's an insane value. You have to know these kind of things. Capitalize on those ADP gaps.
Yeah, we're going to get to a bunch of them today, but saying J.K. Dobbins, Jerome Ford,
that's a perfect transition.
Tank
Bigsby.
We can go to the Broncos.
Take us to the Broncos. That's perfect.
That's you look at the Denver Broncos, 2 running backs there, R.J. Harvey, who we mentioned earlier, and then they signed J.K. Dobbins.
Well, let's not limit them to 2. They have other bodies in that room. Still on the roster, Jaleel McLaughlin and Audric Estime.
Yeah, they got those 2 as well. Personally, I don't think I might have a share or 2 of one of them in like a really deep league.
Yeah.
I have been drafting boatload of J.K. Dobbins. He has to be one of my most drafted players. Again, you look at the ADP, you look at the talent level between him and R.J. Harvey. To me, J.K. Dobbins is the better back. Again, hear training camp news, J.K. Dobbins is the one, or at the very, it's a split backfield. And, if he can stay healthy, I do not see how they're not equal in terms of production at the very least, if not J.K. Dobbins higher. And then again, look at the ADP difference. You got to draft R.J. Harvey, 5 rounds earlier?
It's more than that. It's almost a 70-pick difference.
70-pick difference? It's like... and again, you then look at professional where experts have it, and it's a much narrower gap.
I do want to say I have J.K. Dobbins on 45% of my best ball teams.
Yeah.
So I agree I don't think I've drafted a single R.J. Harvey, and that is correct. I'm looking at my rankings right now. I haven't drafted a single R.J. Harvey. The gap here is ridiculous. And I do want to bring something up, though. I have J.K. Dobbins actually ranked behind R.J. Harvey this season for total fantasy points, and I want to explain that to you a little bit. The reason for that is I think as the season goes along, R.J. Harvey does become the one by the end of the year. I don't think at the start of the season, and I mentioned this a lot with a lot of the rookies. At the start of the year, they'll open as the 2 and become the 1 as the season goes along. But my other thing is, I'm nervous about J.K. Dobbins' passing work. So he's obviously, in my opinion, more of the receiving back compared to R.J. Harvey, but they do still have Jaleel McLaughlin, who has proven an ability to perform out of the backfield, and I'm wondering if that doesn't cap J.K. Dobbins' ceiling. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm drafting a lot of him because he is an insane value. But I do think his ceiling is a little capped because of the number of bodies in that room. I didn't know what you thought about that.
I agree. There's definitely, I'm not taking J.K. Dobbins in round 5. It's where he is being drafted. Absolutely. There is totally question marks because he's not a round 5 player, right? And even round 5 guys have question marks. So this is not a perfect player. There's competition in the backfield, but am I gonna let McLaughlin stop? He had a few games last year that were good, but am I gonna let the presence of him, a borderline RB3, stop me from drafting J.K. Dobbins, who we have seen the talent last year with the Chargers. I mean, when the guy is healthy, talent-wise, I think is a much more talent back than R.J. Harvey. I was not high on R.J. Harvey throughout the pre-draft process, everything. I know they drafted him. He's got high draft capital in round 2, but to me, J.K. Dobbins is one of the most underrated backs in the whole entire league. And you have him in a team where all he's got to beat out is a rookie. Yeah. A rookie who pretty much consensus across the board, people say drafted too high, not that talented. And that's who he's got to beat out for, the running back 1 job on what should be one of the better offenses in the league.
No, I agree with you on that. So here's the question then, J.K. Dobbins or Tank Bigsby? Going less than 10 picks apart, who are you taking between those 2 guys?
Both.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That seems like a lot of time.
Yeah, and honestly, I've found myself in that 12 to 13 loading up, or even 11, 12. I'll go around earlier just to ensure I get them. I'll go 11, 12 with both of them. But if I had to choose one, I would lean Dobbins because of I think the Broncos offense is going to be really good this year. And even if Dobbins is at a 50%, it is. Let's say it's a perfect timeshare between him and RJ Harvey. I still think that's a ton of fantasy points. And I think what Dobbins will give, especially if we're talking about best ball, if we're talking about redraft a little bit, maybe. If we're going best ball, I think Dobbins is going to give you some big spike weeks.
Sure,
where he, can pop a few big runs, he pops some, get some 5-catch game for 50 yards and a touchdown or two, and he gives you pop games that I don't think you're necessarily going to get from Tanks Big Used to be. I think he's going to be more consistently in that. I
agree with that. And just I don't even need a response on this. Just to give you some of the names being drafted around RJ Harvey right now: George Pickens, Tet McMillan, Jalen Waddle, Travion Henderson, Aaron Jones. The tight ends starting to go in that area a little bit too, just behind Hawkinson, just behind Jameson Williams. I mean, Xavier Worthy's right there. These are players that are more sure things, whereas RJ Harvey is a dart throw. I mean, you don't even have to pay this he is in a weird spot rookie running back wise where, of course, Omarion Hampton's ahead of him. There's a clear path to success there. There's more proven talent there. But that's kind of like a weird spot for a rookie running back to be with so much competition. I don't know what to think about that. I do want to take us to our next team.
One last thing, I'll finish off there. Again, we talked about Caleb Johnson earlier. I have Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey separated by one spot in my rankings.
Okay.
And that's a round 9 guy versus a round 6. Talk about, in terms of pure value, I think they're the same kind of dart throw.
Yeah.
In terms of upside, ceiling, floor, all the things that you look at. RJ, where I don't have a single, I haven't drafted him in one league, and I won't draft him in a league. Where he's going, I do not see the argument. I do not get why. Every time I'm in a best ball draft and someone takes RJ in round 6, I'm like, that's a bad pick.
That's a bad pick.
Look at who's there, look at your team. That's a bad pick.
I completely agree. So to talk about a team with maybe a more 1A, 1B type situation, I want to talk about the Tennessee Titans here. So the two running backs there, Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. This is the second year we're seeing these guys together. Not really a lot of change from what we saw last year. The question is, who's going to be the fantasy guy? I currently have Tajay Spears just ahead of Tony Pollard in my rankings. I have Pollard as the RB1, but similar with the Jaguars, I have Spears getting more of the passing work. And I don't think there's enough touchdowns on this offense for the gap to be made up from Pollard to Spears. But I don't know what you think about this.
This is the first take I think we're completely opposite on. I have 18 spots between Pollard and Spears. I have Pollard as my RB23, and I have Spears all the way down as my RB41.
Wow.
I have guys like Ramondre Stevenson, Zach Charbonnet, Quinshon Judkins, Jerome Ford, all ahead of Tajay Spears right here. And here's where I'm at with Spears. You look at last year, it was the same thing out of camp. It's going to be a timeshare, it's going to be a timeshare, it's going to be a timeshare. Tony Pollard had over 300 touches last year.
Yeah.
And this year, you're hearing the same exact thing as last year. Oh, it's going to be kind of split. But then you have beat reporters saying, oh, Tony Pollard's RB1 in camp. It's a similar situation. The offense should be better. So even if Pollard gets a little less volume, let's say Pollard's at 260 touches this year. Let's say he drops down by that's almost 20% slashing carries, right? And touches. Let's say he's at that. I still think he's going to be much more efficient this year because of how much better that passing game should be. I think the Tennessee Titans are going to have again major improvement. You look at who I think are going to be some of the more improved offenses in the league. It's the Jags. It's the Titans. It's some of these teams that are these RBs that are going late that I'm looking to pick up. And I think with that increased production offensively in the passing game, it takes pressure off Pollard. I think Pollard is still the bell cow in there. And I do not see, I'm personally also I'm not high on Spears as a player. I've seen him play. I think the injury concerns, somewhat last year, nagging injuries for several weeks, stuff like that. And I see him as a clear-cut RB2 in the system, and that's where I have him in my rankings with a guy like Rashad White right there, with a guy like Zach Charbonnet and Ramondre Stevenson. I have him as that clear-cut RB2.
So I have him obviously a lot higher than you have him. I have him right now as my RB27. So I have Tajay Spears coming right behind Tyrone Tracy at my RB27. I was looking at their ADP, so it's going to be about a 40 pick gap between these guys with Pollard going ahead of Spears. I have not drafted any Pollard. I have a little bit of Spear, and I have about, I think, just under 30% of my teams have Tajay Spears on them.
Yeah.
I think that the ceiling for Tajay Spears is higher because I think we know who Tony Pollard is at this stage, and I don't think Tony Pollard's a bad player. Like I said, I have them projected nearly back to back.
Yeah.
I don't have nearly as much faith in the jump in the offense that you had, even in the passing game. I don't know that Cam Ward's going to come in and dominate.
I believe in Cam Ward.
And that's
Cam
the
Ward
thing you can
truther.
have, but I don't necessarily have that same faith in the offense that
Yeah.
you have. And so I expect him to come down a little bit. And we've obviously seen Cam Ward play a little bit during his college career.
Yeah.
He's a guy that he obviously tries to stand in the pocket and extend the play, but he'll hit his tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. He's not afraid to make that check down. He doesn't have to take a big play. He does, and I think he'll get this knocked out of him within a couple weeks of the I'm going to extend the play for 12 minutes that we saw Caleb Williams go through. But he will hit those checkdowns, and I expect Spears to be the beneficiary of that. If you also look at some of like the running backs he's going around, the next running back picked after him is Rachaad White. That's not a name I have that much.
That's where I have him at though in terms of my
so
rankings.
that's where we differ here.
Yeah.
I have him ahead of those guys, and that's why I think I've ended up with him so much. Is because I do like him a lot more than the names around him because the ceiling is there. I'm not anti-Tony Pollard, but his price almost 40 picks earlier is just a little rich for my blood. He's being drafted ahead of DeAndre Swift right now.
Yeah.
I don't see him finishing ahead of DeAndre Swift.
I have Swift 2 spots out of my rankings, but Swift is one of my big time value.
No, of course.
Yeah.
And he's right there in the Caleb Johnson range. Now I am taking over Caleb Johnson because I don't like Caleb Johnson at all. And I do think you're right. I think he is the one on the team. I'm not trying to take that away from him. But unlike the Jaguars offense where the value gap is, this is like almost a reverse value gap in my opinion.
Yeah.
Where you see the one being discounted, here the one you have to pay up for. And I think the gap isn't big enough to kind of justify that pay of cost. But I'm not against, that's not an
And I
anti-Tony
can,
Pollard.
I completely get that. And Pollard's not a guy I've drafted a ton. I have several shares of him in leagues where I like the value, right? If he drops to me in middle of round 7, I like him a lot.
Yeah.
Right? In a 12-team league, middle of round 7 is a spot.
That's a good value for him.
Is where, I've found myself drafting Pollard because people are scared off by this tight ends offense not being great and by Spears. And, you say we've seen what Pollard is. And I agree with that. Like we've seen Pollard he's been a workhorse back for several years now. This is where I think we differ on Spears as the player. I think we've seen where Spears is at. He's a good pass catching running back.
Yeah.
He is by no means going to give you 15 carries a game, for a certain amount of yards. Those 15 carries are going to be Pollard's. I think this offense is good enough to get in the red zone. Pollard gets all of the red zone touches. Pollard is a decent pass catching back, has been this whole career.
He's not a bad pass
So
catcher
he's going to get some work in the passing game.
I agree.
If he's getting 15 carries, a couple catches a week, and some work in the red zone, to me, that is, I had Pollard's going around the Pacheco big time injury questions. I like Swift over him. Aaron Jones, I lean Pollard with that. Montgomery, big time lean Pollard because I'm getting the RB1 in that system. So, I think that's the difference where we're at with Pollard and Spears. I think you just believe in Spears as the player.
I do a little bit
more than where I'm at. I see him
be
as a good pass catching running back. I don't think he is going to be any sort of workhorse in the NFL.
And I could be a little higher on Spears because I've been waiting for him to break out my fantasy team for about 3 years now. But I do want to say, the running backs going in the,
He's
in
good
my
value,
opinion,
yeah.
he's in a weird spot. Pollard is. He's in a weird spot kind of draft-wise. When you're looking at the running backs that go from a range of Harvey, Pacheco, guys I have a lot of confidence in, Henderson, who we're about to talk about with a little bit of question marks, Aaron Jones, who I know we differ on a little bit, but we believe is a good player, but there's obviously reports about him potentially not being a clear one.
Yeah.
And then Pollard, for me, I've been kind of avoiding that area with the exception of Henderson, and just kind of waiting that pick and taking Swift right there, and that being why I have so much Swift.
Yeah, because following it's that Swift, you get Caleb Johnson, Swift, Tyrone Tracy, you get
the guys that have.
I agree with you. I find myself going wide receiver in that 7-8
and the wide
range a
receivers
lot.
there are so strong.
But I like
Jamison Williams, George Pickens,
huge big time.
Jalen Waddle.
And that's been how my draft's like, because especially if you go RB early.
Yes.
So that's why I find myself going Pollard when I need that. But sometimes if I'm in the middle of round 7 and I have Pollard sitting for me there, I end up taking him, and I have him, I think, in a few fantasy things just because I like the value.
Yeah, we have two teams left to go through. I do want to jump in and take a quick pause to talk about something else on that. You talked about taking running backs early. Our last episode was obviously a draft strategy episode. This year, because of the kind of clear fall off at running back, have you been targeting running backs early? Is this the almost return, because for the last couple of years it's been, all the experts, 0 RB, 0 RB,
Zero
load
RB,
up on those
yep.
receivers. Is this the year it changes?
Yes and no. If I'm drafting early in round 1, absolutely. If I'm drafting late in round 1, no.
Okay.
Here's why. The running backs on that 3-4 in that round 3-4 range, I love.
Yes.
So if I don't go running back early, I mentioned to you earlier, one of the setups I'm loving is in that later back half of the first round, going like a Brian Thomas or a Puka or an Amon-Ra, combined with then you come around the curve and you grab whichever one falls faster, or Nico, and you go 2 wide receiver stack. Then it comes around round 3-4 and I'm going Hampton plus K9 or a setup like that, So it's not necessarily will I go running back super early, but if I'm leaving round 4 without 2 running backs, I don't love my draft, and then I'm normally scooping one up in 5.
Yes.
There's been very few drafts where I do not leave round 5 with 2 running backs, whereas there will be drafts where I leave round 4 without even sometimes a wide receiver. I've had drafts where I'll go running back, tight end, quarterback, and I'll go receiver because that receiver value is so great. So, and then early in round 1, I love Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. I love the 2 of them, and those have been my.
I have a lot of Bijan,
picks,
so I'm agreeing with you a little bit here. I found myself in drafts either going running backs early. For example, draft I went running backs first 3 rounds. I went with Bijan, Bucky Irving, and Josh Jacobs, and I was over the moon with my team. But if I don't get 2 of those early backs, I almost always find myself either ending up with DeAndre Swift or Jalen Warren. As those 2 guys. Those are the guys that as my RB2. I don't love that, but those are guys I have confidence in, and so I think there's ways to make it work regardless, but you can't force it. I'm with you on that. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. Like, everyone needs to do this year. If the value's there, take it. If you have the second pick and grab Bijan, that's a beautiful choice.
That's what I've been finding this year is there's a lot of value in those there are several players I love in every single round, and it's just about how can I set up these different teams different ways. Because it's not this year where I'm like, and we talked about a little bit that 7-8 range and 8-9. It's a little iffy in there, but you get past that point and there's every single round there's like players I love. Round 3 or 4, I love Chase Brown. I love Kenneth Walker. If he can stay healthy, bro has upside, right? So there's certain guys in there I love. Yeah.
So I want to take us to our next team now. I want to talk about the New England Patriots. So the Patriots, obviously they played their preseason game. I guess that was 2 nights ago now, or was that just last night? Goodness, time's flying.
2
nights ago.
Wait, no, last night.
I was gonna say, I think I'm losing my mind
last
here. Travion Henderson, the rookie out of Ohio State, looked phenomenal. It was very exciting to see that. He returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown, had just the 1 carry, but it was 18 yards, and then 3 catches, all with the ones. It wasn't like he was getting with the 2s. He got it all with the 1s. That was a very promising look. They do have the incumbent who just signed an extension, not recently, this offseason, Ramondre Stevenson. They also have Antonio Gibson still, just a name to throw out there. Not really a fantasy name, but a name
we shouldn't be overreacting to preseason, but he looked great in his runs. He was leveling people. I'm like, Antonio Gibson, the 3rd down running back, pass catcher, is trucking guys.
He's been there, so he's just another name to keep an eye on. And so also we might have another special visitor here, and this is Torrey Pine.
We got a special guest.
But it is interesting to see what are your thoughts on this? Are you all in on Henderson? Are you a little hesitant? Where are you at here?
After last night, talent of Henderson, it was undeniable before, but you saw in the first 2 drives what gets people really excited. And I haven't been drafting a ton of Henderson because I don't like the dog is interrupting. I don't like the situation so much, or I didn't like it.
Sure.
And last night, I think what's going to be seen is the Travion highlights.
Oh, absolutely.
The 3 catches, the 1 run for 18 yards. I mean, the kick return, those highlights are going to be everywhere. We're about to see Travion, who we're already paying a pretty steep price for, and a guy who projects to be in somewhat of a timeshare, right?
And a little bit.
We're about to see his price shoot up to, I'm guessing, probably at that James Cook 4-5 turn level. I would not be shocked to have to, be sitting there and it's, Travion over a James Cook, but that is just Ramondre Stevenson last night had on those 2 opening drives. I think that's the story that's going to be lost in this. That you kind of pointed out, and then I went back because I was on a plane flight. I didn't get to watch the game, but I went back and watched the first 2 drives. That's the story that's I think going to get lost in this. Ramondre had more carries.
Yes, he did.
In those first 2 drives with the Patriots offense, and that has to be taken into the consideration and talked about, because if we're going to pay around 4 or 5 right now ADP for Trevion, which that's what it's about to be for best ball leagues. If that's what we're going to end up paying, then he's not even going to lead the backfield in carries, and I got to pay around 4 or 5 ADP. I love the talent, and I think if you're in a redraft, that makes a lot more sense, because by the end of the year, we might see Trevion eat up there in a best ball league, where we got to win every week. I don't know.
And it is a majority, of course, of the audience being the redraft. He is a value, but I right now am drafting a lot of Trevion Henderson. I've been high on him. I've been on the horse since before the preseason game.
You've been on, so you've gone in the value.
I do have the value, but I think if the ADP rises, which we very much so expect it to do, I'm going to be out on the Patriots backfield. I don't think I'm going to be taking anything just as a whole, because and it's funny, I did it this offseason. I traded for Ramondre Stevenson in Dynasty, but I'm going to be out on the Patriots offense as a whole on the backfield, my apologies, because Henderson's going to be too much of a price. Right now, he's going in that running back kind of weird spot we talked about, where if you need a running back there, that's a great value, but if he moves up, if he's going in the range of some of these earlier guys, if he goes, like we're talking about James Conner being really the next big name that he could move up to, is he worth it there? I don't believe he is. And so I think then you end up in a really sticky situation where you don't want to draft the dog's doing the worm here on the floor. You don't want to draft him over a guy like James Cook necessarily, but you also, the value for Ramondre isn't there. Ramondre's going to pick 119 right there, right around to Jordan Mason, a guy that maybe even has a little bit more upside where he could win the job. Whereas Ramondre's not going to take the job from the rookie. And so I think there's a potential. I'm fully out on this Patriots backfield. And it sucks to say that, because Henderson is a really good football player.
And lucky you that you've been able to get the we got the dog really joining the show today.
Yeah,
we
absolutely
got
involved.
Three hosts. But yeah, I think you've been lucky to get in on Trevion with that 6th round price. And right now, if he falls, if I'm in the 6th round and I'm sitting there with him after seeing how that Patriots offense was running around through him, I've had a few shares of him. I told you that, but I would be probably buying more. And again, gotta be careful not to overreact to preseason, because we saw warning signs in the preseason game last night. But so round 6, I'm drafting him, but we're both anticipating that price. I would be shocked if it doesn't shoot up by at least a round.
Yeah, and by the time you're drafting for your home leagues, that'll be a name that people will recognize. People will be recognizing that.
It's going to be on all the sleeper lists, all the, when people go search up their quick draft guide.
Exactly. Trevion Henderson is going to be a name there, especially as a rookie. People love to draft a rookie, and so I think that the value is going to be gone. But if you're drafting today, it's a great time to get on Trevion Henderson.
I need to hop in some best balls tonight.
You want to bring us to our
last one
team here,
your team. We talked about mine earlier. We're going to end with yours. We started with mine, ending with yours. The New York Giants.
Yeah.
You got Tyrone Tracy.
Yep.
As probably projecting it ended last year as the RB1. They draft Cam Scalaboo in the 4th round. There you still have Devin Singletary, who I think no one is talking about whatsoever.
But a little bit.
He's been kind of a consistent presence. In the NFL for a while, but last year at least in that Giants backfield.
Absolutely.
How do you have that Giants backfield?
Yeah. So I follow the Giants even closer than I follow every other team, just because it is my team. So I've been keeping up very closely with the beat reports. At the start of camp, it looked like Scalaboo was that guy. Before the pass came on, it was Cam Scalaboo's show, and even when the pass came on, it was highlight after highlight, a big run after big run for Cam Scalaboo. The important thing to remember is they're not tackling each other. Cam Scalaboo is running through arms, going for 40 yards on a play that would have been blown up in the backfield. He does have the talent to break those tackles. But Tracy's not getting those same highlights because he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to show off on a 40-yard carry. He's getting the work in the passing game. He's running with the one.
And also know, even with the beat reporters, who is Cam Scalaboo? He's getting the highlights, but against the twos with the second offense. So we might be seeing highlights, but who's with the first offense? That's what matters, right? Who's on the field?
I completely agree. And Tracy is the one here. The only real knock on him last year, he was very solid last year. The only knock was the fumbles. And obviously Scalaboo could be an answer to that. Scalaboo is a guy who's a tough runner. He's probably not going to put the ball on the ground. Who's to say Tracy hasn't figured out in the offseason? We've only seen 1 year of it. It's not like some of those other running backs. Even Ramondre, who has had a fumbling problem year after year. It was 1 year.
And also,
rookie season.
I don't know if you've seen the news. I think it was yesterday, it broke Cam Scalaboo with hamstring.
The hamstring.
Has a hamstring problem. And hamstring is the worst injury probably for a running back to get in terms of any of those nagging injuries, because that doesn't go away. And that continues to nag and flare up. So You get that added to the mix. I've already been in on Tracy. I've been incredibly out on Scatterboo. I don't get where it's because he did really good in the college football playoff. He was everyone's favorite player. He gets drafted in the 4th round. That's not high-end draft capital. Everyone's acting with the way we talk about Cam Scatterboo. I mean, we're acting like this is a guy with round 2 draft capital that's coming in as a future starter. No, he's drafted in round 4, right around where Dylan Sampson was drafted. Why aren't we like, and now again, people are doing the same with Dylan Sampson. I'm out on Dylan Sampson too, but it's like, why are we acting like this round 4 means, he's going to be the running back 1 by the end of the year? No, like, if anything, that may show a level of confidence the Giants have in Tyrone Tracy, because they don't go out and sign a free agent. And they don't spend any high-end draft capital. They spend a 4th round pick to go get a bruiser who complements Tracy well. They also don't get anyone that goes and is Tracy's skill set. They go get a bruiser. I'm not sold on a running back with 4.7 speed and 4th round draft capital. And now a hamstring issue that's clearly the number 2. You'll take as many shares of Cam Scatterboo as you want.
And pushing Tracy down the board. Even more than, Cam Scatterboo's not going crazy early. Don't get people aren't drafting him early, but
it's pushing Tracy down the board. Tracy's going what? As quarterback 32?
So far down the board. I don't even know what he is.
I don't even think he's in the top 2/3 running back.
He's going as RB 29 on Sleeper.
Okay.
And he's had DeAndre Swift for my most drafted player right now.
I think he's in my top 5 on most drafted players.
So much, and I want to say this right now: the Giants are playing football right now in that preseason game. The ones on their first drive. Tracy, 3 carries and 2 catches on the first drive with the ones. Obviously, no Malik Neighbors playing, so it is important to remember for the targets.
But the carries, who's the running back 1 on the field?
2 catches through the first drive with the 1 offense.
Yeah,
that's huge. But once again, just kind of point this out. Scatterboo's not playing with the hamstring issue, so it's not like there's a big thing.
I think that's a bigger knock on Scatterboo as a rookie, be playing in the preseason.
I don't think there's any question.
My only knock against the Giants' backfield is this Giants' offense. Look, it's your team, but should be better than last year. And Tracy when Tracy came and took over that backfield last season, was a very fine flex play. People are forgetting, he was a very fine flex play. Was huge for some people late in the year.
Absolutely.
This Giants offense should be better. They are not going to be good. This Giants offense is not going to be good. But you're getting a Russell Wilson who, is probably a significant upgrade at quarterback.
Yeah.
That O-line was young last year. Should only be better this year again.
I hope so.
You bring in. So I don't see any world where he doesn't produce as well as last year. And last year he was really good on a bad team. Tyrone Tracy is a good player.
He's a good player.
And people do not realize that. They're so in on, a running back drafted in the 4th round with 4.7 speed that it's pushing him. I'm in a dynasty draft right now. And Cam Scatterboo is being drafted 2 rounds earlier than Tyrone Tracy.
Who is a second-year player, mind you.
Who's a second, exactly. It's not like some bad situation. He's being drafted, and some guy just took him in my dynasty draft just a moment ago. I'm sitting here and I get a notification. Cam Scatterboo drafted the freaking 8th round of my dynasty fantasy draft. What are you doing?
That is ridiculous. And I do want to say one more thing for the fumbling problem. If you remember, Tyrone Tracy is a converted wide receiver.
Yeah.
His first few years in college, he played wide receiver. He's getting used to taking the hits at a running back. We expect that problem to get better. The one thing I will ask you, are you a little worried about the touchdown upside for Tyrone Tracy? Because Scatterboo, his role could very well be the goal line.
Yeah, he could vulture goal line carries easily. And, again, not saying this is a Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery situation, but we see a running back get vultured their goal line carries and work and still be fine, right? Yeah. Again, way different situation.
And in terms of total touchdowns, it's going to be lower.
This team
isn't going to score nearly as many touchdowns.
Yeah, as a line. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And that's what I mean by that. In terms of the situation, this is not the Lions offense you're investing in where they can sustain 2 running backs, right? They can't. But you look at it, yes, he might get some touchdowns vultured, but you're drafting him also in right now as the RB29. And that's probably the biggest downside on him, is he might get some touchdown carries vultured by a 4th-string running back who right now is out with hamstring problems.
Yeah, and
a 4th-round running back who's out with hamstring problems. So that's the knock on the art, and then not playing in the best offense.
Yes, because you look at it, I only expect the Giants to maybe score 8 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
And if you lose half of those to Scatterboo, that is a big hit. But he's going in such a sweet spot.
But he's going to get all the catches. And in a PPR league,
Absolutely.
that almost makes up for it.
Well,
Yeah.
and we talked about the kind of running back weird spot. Tracy's going right now in a spot that's weird for wide receivers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of question marks. I mean, Jacoby Myers is probably the safest guy, but Khalil Shakir is struggling with an ankle injury. Debo Samuel,
I love me
what's
some
he going to
Shakir.
be? But he's struggling with the injury.
Yeah.
His injury
Yeah.
question marks. Debo Samuel, what shape is he in? New
If
offense.
Terry's back,
Cooper
Debo
Kupp,
shoots
new
down. Yeah.
offense. What's it going to look like? I
I
mean,
love him.
even like Jawan Jennings, is he truly the one? All the wide receivers going in this area.
Ricky
have question
Pearsall.
marks.
We're hearing great things in
We're
camp,
hearing
but
a lot
that
of
means
things.
Jawan Jennings down. But can we trust,
That's what, but so there's a lot
Yeah.
of question marks with wide receiver. I think that's why him and Swift, both going in the same kind of range, are two guys I'm drafting so much of. Just because they're the
That's funny.
clear
It's
best
almost
thing.
the same thing for me. I think my top team composition is I go two running backs in the first four, then whatever I don't get, then those rounds 5 through 7 is straight wide receivers or tight ends.
Yeah.
In that range, and then 8, 9 is running back, or 7, 9 running back. And I'm like, Tyrone Tracy is in so many of my best ball drafts. You have the same with DeAndre Swift and Tony Pollard. Pacheco, I really like the value there. Yes, injury question marks, but elite offense and the RB1 probably.
There are
Probably.
strong reports about that.
Yeah,
but
strong reports, but
I have 4 teams with both Swift and Tracy.
Yeah.
And it's just taking a back-to-back rounds, grabbing those guys and feeling
And I
confident.
love that.
Like those guys, typically as my RB 3-4, if I can, that's the dream. If I can leave with them as my RBs 3 and 4,
And
that's beautiful.
heck, I would be comfortable if you tell me I'm going, let's say I draft high, I go Jahmyr Gibbs, and then I go DeAndre Swift, Tyrone Tracy. I'm comfortable with that because it means I have elite value at wide receiver, tight end, or quarterback. I'm good with that as my running back room.
Let me pitch you this team. I've pulled up some examples of teams I have just so I can kind of show what this would look like. Obviously, this is a best ball draft, so in a redraft it would be a little different. But I was able to get Bijan in the first round and then go get positional advantages. I ended up with Josh Allen and Brock Bowers on my team. I ended up with Marvin Harrison, Tyreek Hill, Ted McMillan, Jaden Reed, Jerry Jeudy, and Khalil Shakir as my wide receivers. And then I was able to end up with Swift and Tracy as my 2 and 3. And obviously I went Tajay Spears because I'm a little higher on him, but like I was able to go get those positional advantages.
And you
feel
can be so comfortable with that
And
because you're getting
fine.
2 guys with elite upside and a high floor.
Absolutely.
Again, no one is challenging Tracy for touches in this. I'm so out of Camp Scouting.
Yeah.
If there's any player that I'm more out, I've hated on a few guys in this league. If there's any player I'm more out, that's Cam Scouting. He is not getting his touches vultured by Cam Scouting. DeAndre Swift, I know so many people are Kyle Mahogany, however you say his name, Mahogany, whatever. And Roshan Johnson, no, his touches are safe. And, it's like high floor. And then if the offense is good, let's say the Giants have a surprising year, and we're looking at an average offense, and he's the, far and away the RB1.
He's top 24 easily.
Upside through the roof. So high floor, pretty high ceiling with these guys. And I'm getting them late, That's the value. I
think that's a great value. I think that was a good way to wrap us up here. It did kind of turn into a little bit. We didn't even talk about the Bears, but just talking about DeAndre Swift for about 40 minutes. But Nathan, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
It's always good to talk all with you. Thank you very much for coming. I will be going back to school here soon, so the videos will not be coming out nearly as often with classes starting up. But I want to thank you for supporting this summer and sticking around and learning a little bit more about fantasy football. Best of luck this year.